The Lean Startup by Ries. Part 1 Vision, Chapter 4 Experiment. For long-term change, experiment immediately. Caroline Barleen is a director in the Global Social Innovation Division at Hewlett-Packard, a multinational company, Hewlett-Packard, a multinational company with more than 300,000 employees and more than 100 billion in annual sales. Caroline, who leads global community involvement, is a social entrepreneur working to get more of HP's employees to take advantage of company's policy of volunteering. Corporate guidelines encourage every employee to spend up to 4 hours a month of company time volunteering in his or her community. That work would take the form of any philanthropic effort, painting fences, building houses, or even using pro bono or work-based skills outside the company. Encouraging the latter type of volunteering was Caroline's priority. Because of his talent and values, HP's combined workforce has the potential to have a monumental positive impact. A designer could help a nonprofit with a new website design. A team of engineers could write a school for internet access, could wire a school for internet access. Caroline's project is just beginning, and most employees do not know that this volunteering policy exists, and only a tiny fraction take advantage of it. Most of the volunteering has been of the low impact variety involving manual labor, even when the volunteers have highly trained experts, even though the volunteers were highly trained experts. Barlin's vision is to take the hundreds and thousands of employees in the company and transform them into a force for social good. This is the kind of corporate initiative undertaken every day at companies around the world. It doesn't look like a startup by the conventional definition or what we see in the movies. On the surface, it seems to be suited to traditional management and planning. However, I hope the discussion in Chapter 2 has prompted you to be a little suspicious. Here's how we might analyze this project into a lean startup framework. Caroline's project faces extreme uncertainty. There had never been a volunteer campaign of this magnitude at HP before. How confident should she be that she knows the real reason people aren't volunteering? Most important, how much does she really know about how to change the behavior of hundreds and thousands of people in more than 170 countries? Barlaylin's goal is to inspire her colleagues to make the world a better place. Look at the way her plan seems full of untested assumptions and a lot of vision. In accordance with traditional management practices, Caroline is spending time getting buy-in from various departments and other managers and preparing a roadmap of initiative for the first 18 months of her project. She also has a strong accountability framework with metrics for the impact of her project should have on the company over the next 4 years. Like many entrepreneurs, she has a business plan that lays out her intentions nicely. Yet, despite all that work, she is so far creating one-off wins and no closer to knowing if her vision will be able to scale. One assumption, for example, might be that the company's long-standing values included a commitment to improving the community, but the recent economic trouble had resulted in an increased company-wide strategy focus on short-term profitability. Perhaps long-time employees would feel a desire to reaffirm their values of giving back to the community by volunteering. A second assumption could be that she would find it more satisfying and therefore more sustainable to use their actual workplace skills in a volunteer capacity, which would have a greater impact on behalf of the organization to which she donated their time. Also, lurking within Caroline's plans are many practical assumptions about employee willingness to take the time to volunteer, their level of commitment and desire, and the way to best reach them with her message. The lean startup model offers a way to test these hypotheses rigorously, immediately, and thoroughly. Strategic planning takes months to complete. These experiments could begin immediately. By starting small, Caroline could prevent a tremendous amount of waste down the road without compromising her overall vision. Here's what it took. It might look like if Caroline were to treat her project as an experiment. Break it down. The first step would be to break down the grand vision into its component parts. The two most important assumptions entrepreneurs make are what I call the value hypothesis and the growth hypothesis. The value hypothesis tests whether a product or service really delivers value to customers once they are using it. What's a good indicator that employees find donating their time valuable? What could survey them? We could survey them to get their opinion, but that would not be accurate because most people have hard time assessing their feelings objectively. Experiments provide a more accurate gauge. What could we see in real time that would serve as a proxy for the value participants were gaining from volunteering? We could find opportunities for a small number of employees to volunteer and then look at the retention rate of those employees. How many of them sign up to volunteer again? When an employee voluntarily invests their time and attention in this program, that is a strong indicator that they find it valuable. For the growth hypothesis, which tests how new customers will discover a product or service, we can do a similar analysis. Once the program is up and running, how will it spread among employees from initial early adopters to mass adoption throughout the company? A likely way this program could expand is through viral growth. If that is true, the most important thing to measure is behavior. Would the early participants actively spread the word to their employees, to other employees? In this case, a simple experiment would involve taking a very small number, a dozen perhaps, of existing long-term employees, providing an exceptional volunteer opportunity for them. Because Caroline's hypothesis was that employees would be motivated by their desire to live up to HP's historical commitment to community service, the experiment would target employees who felt the greatest sense of disconnect between their daily routine and the company's expressed values. The point is not to find the average customer, but to find early adopters, the customer who feels the need for the product most acutely. Those customers tend to be more forgiving of mistakes and are especially eager to give feedback. Next, using a technique I call the concierge minimum viable product, Caroline should make the first few participants had an experience that was as good as she could make it, completely aligned with their vision, with her vision. Unlike in a focus group, her goal would be to measure what the customers actually did. For example, how many of the first volunteers actually complete their volunteer assignments? How many volunteers a second time? How many are willing to recruit a colleague to participate in a subsequent volunteer activity? Additional experiments can expand on this early feedback and learning. For example, if the growth model requires that a certain percentage of participants share their experience with colleagues and encourage their participation, the degree to which they take place can be tested even with a very small sample of people. If 10 people complete their first experiment, how many do we expect to volunteer again? If they are asked to recruit a colleague, how many do we expect we will do? Remember that these are supposed to be the kind of early adopters with the most to gain from the program. Put another way, what if all 10 early adopters decline to volunteer again? That would be highly significant and very negative result. If the number from such early experiments don't look promising, there is clearly a problem with the strategy. That doesn't mean it's time to give up. On the contrary, it means it's time to get some immediate qualitative feedback about how to improve the program. Here's where the kind of experimentation has an advantage over traditional market research. We don't have to commission a survey to find or people to interview. We already have a cohort of people to talk to, as well as knowledge about their actual behavior, the participants in the initial experiment. This entire experiment could be conducted in a matter of weeks, less than one tenth of the time to the traditional strategic planning process. Also, it can happen in parallel with strategic planning while the plan is being formulated. Even when experiments produce a negative results, those failures prove instructive and can influence the strategy. For example, what if no volunteer can be found who are experiencing the conflict of values within the